This week on Discussion Hour, Street Fighter II. One of the most renowned Street Fighter games and one of the most renowned computer games of all time. Ryu and Ken, Sagat and Blanka, everybody knows them and everybody's played with them. But how relevant is Street Fighter today, and what do we know of this truly inspirational game? John Humphreys and Michael Hannigan discuss the game at length. Gentlemen, Street Fighter, a classic game, a game we played most of our lives. Is the Ryu and Ken phenomena perhaps a little dated? And where on earth was Street Fighter 1?
Well, I think you'll find, Jonathan, Street Fighter 1 was actually a Sega platform game which was imported from arcades in the United States in 1994. Although Ryu and Ken did feature in the original title, their names were not actually Ryu or Ken. Their names were Hu Jun Sao and Pu Lun. They were two Chinese men, both dressed in the same uniform, and the people they fought were not human, although in Street Fighter II, Blanka may seem like some sort of ogre, but in fact he was actually a small boy who was involved in an aeroplane accident which resulted in the mutation of his body. I think that's what you have to remember when you ask such a question as, what was Street Fighter 1? There wasn't really a Street Fighter 1 at all. It was simply an idea which was mutated into something else just in the same way that Blanka
I
was.
would obviously say that although you were both on the ball about the idea of Street Fighter 1 existing, I would have to interrupt and say that I know it did not. Street Fighter 1 was a myth, and the whole concept of Street Fighter 2 was that it was something fresh and something interesting, and that surely it must be good if they made a second one. It's a great game.
It is not just a beat 'em up, it is a story of passion, a story of power, a story of love, a story of good and evil. It is essentially more meaningful than the New Testament and the Old Testament combined. It has a Jesus figure, Ryu, who sacrifices himself and disappears into thin air shortly afterwards. It has a heroine, a woman dressed in blue. It has a stretchy man. It has an evil man. It has everything you could possibly want.
I would rather like to move the discussion towards the super moves and the surrounding myth around what exactly Ryu says when he does a Hadouken or a spinning kick. Because when he does do a spinning kick, he makes this sound, the fight's up for the rhythm. But in actual fact, according to the Street Fighter II Turbo and Super Street Fighter II Turbo manual, the words they describe Ryu as saying are in fact Tashimaku Spenpu Kraku.
That is totally ludicrous. The idea that Ryu was saying Tashimaku Spenpu is ridiculous. Whether it was in the manual or not, I think is completely irrelevant. The fact is, he says the fight's up for the get-em, and everybody knows it. It sounds like the fight's up for the get-em. It looks like the fight's up for the get-em. It can only fit into those syllables. How on earth are you supposed to say anything at such a speed, let alone Tashimaku Spenpu or whatever you said? Can you say superfractalastic at such a speed? No, you can't. It's impossible. It's physically impossible, and it's technologically impossible to fit such a word into such a small time. The move only lasts 2.3 seconds at most, and that's if you hold down R. And the fight's up for the get-em seems like a much more appropriate phrase for a Western audience.
I was not describing
and I don't know what
Street
the
Fighter
fight's up for the
in
get-em
any
means,
way
but it sounds a lot like the fight is up, and let's get 'em. What would you rather say as you were spinning into somebody's face? I know what I would rather say. I'd rather like them to know what the hell I was talking about.
This is all fact in the real world and the world of computer games. And on his uppercut he says Shu Ryu Ken, as well as Hadouken with the fireball. Although many people think he's saying Hadouken, but that isn't in fact a word at all, as you know.
Thank you, gentlemen. Next week on Discussion Hour, Crash Bandicoot. A lost classic or just crap?